Shana Tova, Good Yantif. It's said that there are only 7 stories that exist in the world, and they just get told over and over again. And one of those stories is what's going to be the focus of the sermon for this morning. And so I do what any good rabbi now does, which is I put into ChatGPT, give me some examples of this particular story they're going to be talking about. And interestingly, some of my favorite ones that came up were actually not stories, but songs. And so I'm going to encourage us to maybe sing along to a couple of these as you try to figure out what the sermon for today is going to be about. Okay? So if you know the song, please don't make me sing by myself. I'm sitting in the railway station, got a ticket for my destination. Oh, on a tour of one-night stands, my suitcase and guitar in hand, and every stop is neatly planned for a poet and a one-man band. Homeward bound, I wish I was homeward bound. Home, where my thoughts escaping. Home, where my music's playing. Home, where my love lies waiting silently for me. Or a similar era, let me go home. I want to go home. I feel so broke up. I want to go home. And then more recently about a house, this one I think I may be more by myself. I know they say you can't go home again. I just had to come back one last time. Ma'am, I know you don't know me from Adam, but these handprints on the front steps are mine. I thought if I could touch this place or feel it, the brokenness inside me might start healing. Out here it's like I'm someone else. I thought that maybe I could find myself. If I could just come in, I swear I'll leave. Won't take nothing but a memory from the house that built me. That's from Marimba Lambert. And country roads take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home, country roads. So it's no surprise that there are so many songs and pieces of literature on the topic of leaving and returning home. It's literally as old as Western literature. Credited to Homer in the 8th century before the Common Era, the Iliad and even more so the Odyssey tell the story of Odysseus' departing his home in Ithaca to fight in the Trojan War and his extremely eventful attempt to return home following that same war. Odysseus leaves Ithaca and returns to Ithaca, but neither he nor his home are the same when he gets back. As desperately as he wishes to return to his wife, his son, and his home, it's only because of what he learned along the way that equipped him for that successful homecoming. Even with our Judaism's foundational story, which is roughly the same age, we have 2 examples of stories of journeys back to our home. In a more literal sense, the Torah is telling the story of the children of Israel, or Jacob, leaving their homeland and eventually returning as Bnei Israel, the people, to the exact same spot that they had left. While the geography hadn't changed, we, the Jewish people, had changed in innumerable ways. Another example would be the idea of Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, that both represents Adam and Eve's very first home in the Torah, and that they are forced to leave at the end of their story. But when we end our lives, we say, B'Gan Eden Tehei Menuchatam, that the Garden of Eden should be their resting place. The very place that our story began is the place that our story ends. The sense of security that the land of Israel represented needed to be left in order to return successfully. And the peace of the first Garden of Eden represents our hope for the world to come. Yet I actually think the most apt example of this theme that can enlighten us during this high holiday season is actually found once again in the sport of baseball. I think I'm caught up in my Mets, who are hopefully going to make it. So Salman Schechter, the founder of my alma mater, the Jewish Theological Seminary, more than 100 years ago, is said to have taught that in order to be a rabbi in America, you need to know baseball. Now, I think he said that not only because it was the most popular sport of the time, but also because it has something more to teach us as well. At a cursory level, one could say that God loves baseball because the world was created in the big inning. But with a closer look, however, there's something that is truly unique about the sport of baseball. The objective of the game is also to leave home, to come back home. The starting place and the ending place are the exact same place. But the game is actually about the journey taken to get back home. While most sports focus on the defense of one's area and scoring on the other team's location, baseball both begins and ends in the exact same spot. Home. In some ways, all of our stories and all of our lives are about the difficult journey back home. To get back to exactly where we started. The way we found a sense of peace and comfort in our return to a place that felt familiar, even sometimes when we had never been there before. It could be a childhood home like the Marimba Lambert song, The House That Built Me, that could represent that idea. I remember one of my earliest memories, my grandparents passed away at a fairly young age for me, and so we didn't go out to California that often, which is where they lived, but I was probably about 10 years old when we went back out again to go visit California and go see my father's family. And we went on a bit of a Rabbi Eytan Kenter heritage tour as part of that time, and so we drove by my father's childhood home that in many ways did not resemble the home in which he was raised. And all of a sudden, my father got very emotional. We asked him, why are you getting so emotional? Is it about being back in your house? He said, it's not the house, it's that tree in the front yard. Because he remembers when his sister planted the tree. And shortly after she planted the tree, there was a huge storm. And she was worried that the tree would come out of the ground and the tree would be lost. And she stood out in the storm, holding the tree in the ground. And now, 50 years later, seeing a massive tree in the front yard brought him to tears. This can also happen even at places that we may have never been before. Maybe we visited a university or traveled to Israel and felt in that moment that we had found the place that we truly belong. There are all times where we carry with us the desire to find that comfort, that peace, that sense of self that we want to be able to carry with us throughout our lives. While the desire to return to our physical home is certainly present in our lives, there's also an entirely internal process of return as well. While we translate tshuva as repentance, it literally means to return. To return to ourselves, to go back to the way that we were. That's why the calendar is designed as it is. On Tisha B'Av, the saddest day on the Jewish calendar, we mark the date when we were expelled from our home due to our own misdeeds. Then we work for the next 7 weeks from that moment of time to get to the high holidays and once again be worthy to return into God's embrace. And on our return home, we hopefully have found ourselves all over again. All these songs, these stories, and these teachings exist because you can only return home by leaving. And it is only once we are gone that we're able to realize what we left. There's probably no better example of this than in The Wizard of Oz. When we first meet Dorothy, she dreams of somewhere over the rainbow and the ability to get anywhere but her farm in Kansas. And then we all know the tornado comes, the house gets picked up, it gets dropped back down, she meets Glinda, and what's her first request? How do I get back to Kansas? That very place that she wanted to leave, she can't wait to get back to. Because there's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. The geographer Yifu Tuan, in his book, Space and Place, discusses this very idea with space representing freedom and place representing security. He teaches that we as people will always possess one, but desire the other. When granted freedom, we miss the security, and when protected, we wish to be free. We need to leave home in order to realize how much it means to us. Then we can truly embrace our return home. I'd also like to suggest that while the home we leave and the home to which we would like to return may be the same, our journey will always change us, which is kind of the point. The children of Israel had to leave, be enslaved and freed, in order to return fully formed. By learning what it was like to be impoverished, persecuted, and in need, they are more equipped to self-govern justly. Odysseus' journey equips him to lead better when he eventually returns to Ithaca. The journey home is relevant not only because of the destination, but also, and perhaps even more so, because of the journey. We cannot return unless we leave, and with every step we take away from home, just like in baseball, we get closer to our return. The point of the return, however, is not the arrival at home, but the journey that gets us there. Whether it's our ancestors wandering through the wilderness for the first time in their lives, able to make their own choices and determine their own destiny, or an 18-year-old leaving home for the very first time, the freedom of the departure, along with the knowledge that home will be there when they are ready, guides us through our lives. We then set upon our journey as so many have before. During the time, we're not only finding ourselves, but we're also finding many of the people that we wish to share that journey with. As we journey away from home, we find both new troubles as well as the acknowledgement that we can overcome those very challenges. We find ourselves leaving because staying at home would never allow us to fully express the totality of ourselves. I remember when I first left for college, I like to think that I invented what is now called FOMO, or fear of missing out. I needed to be the last person asleep in my dorm. And I spent time with as many different people, whoever was awake, that I could over the course of the evening. It was also the first time in my life that my choices were exclusively mine. For the vast majority of my first semester, I never attended Shabbat services, because it was the very first time in my life where I felt empowered to make that choice. And I wanted to see what it would be like. But by the second semester, I realized I missed having Shabbat services as part of my life. And it should probably come as no surprise that by 1 year later, I was running the very conservative minyan on campus. I needed to know what it was like to try something else before I could comfortably return and know that it was my choice to do so. And yet something interesting happens when we return back home. The home is not the same one as we remembered. As one traveler put it, intellectually, I know the home I look back on existed for only a moment, and even then, only in my mind. The hometown I remember is a figment, a collage of scenes I constructed in my mind to give life an anchor in time. The truth is, the place I remember as home never actually existed. That's why Thomas Wolfe famously said, "You can't go home again." As much as our life's journey is about the return home to the comfort and nostalgic memories that it provided, both the place we came from has changed, and perhaps even more importantly, we have changed too. The childhood experience of doing something is not the same as doing it as an adult. The bed that was humongous to a 4-year-old is very small to a 30-year-old. I remember returning home to my bunk beds with my wife. The home you lived in doesn't quite feel like the home when it's inhabited by other people and other things. We went back to our home in Ottawa about a year or two after we had departed and went back into our house to visit. And seeing the lack of books on the wall, the lack of dishes in the kitchen, seeing the style of home that it was our home, but it wasn't. We returned to the same room with the same people, just as most of us did this very room last year. But our lives are different. Our world is different. Our needs are different. And the sermon might be different than last year's as well. It's a return to the familiarity of the high holiday experience, but it's never exactly the same. So how can we find that sense of comfort and belonging that we seek if the home we return to is not the home that we left? Just as Oedipus and the children of Israel did, we are asked to learn from T.S. Eliot's teaching from Little Gidding. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know that place for the first time. Whereas Ursula Le Guin responded to Tom Wolfe, you can go home again as long as home is a place you have never been. The people of Israel that returned to the land of Israel had never been there before, but felt at home because of the stories they had heard and their sense of familial attachment. Oedipus returned to a different Ithaca, but was uniquely capable of returning because of the lessons he learned from his journey. When we return home, we experience it in a way that we never had before. Just as walking up to the plate in baseball feels very different than returning and scoring a run, so too is our experience of returning home. We need to appreciate the moment for what it is rather than simply what it was. We find comfort in our childhood home, even though we don't want to live there anymore. We find stability with our family wherever they may be. We find a sense of belonging within a community because they accept us for who we are. It is true that warm embrace that we all feel that sense of home. And maybe in those moments, experience it like it was the very first time. Shana Tova.